right, good morning, everyone. What a great, motivating, and inspiring morning, right? But there's even more to come. So my name is Yasmin Mesbah. I am an adjunct professor of social entrepreneurship at Rollins College. And as you can tell by my pink uniform, I am part of the Global Links team. I am the program manager for the Global Links program, which we heard from this morning among all the other really great initiatives that are working for social impact and to address the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So to continue this conversation, I am pleased to introduce Dhairya Pujara, the founder and CEO of the Ycenter, for a keynote on social innovation and the SDGs. So through the Ycenter, Dhairya is responsible for building a global ecosystem that is bringing together corporations, universities, and NGOs to build experiential educational programs. Dhairya is also the curator for Global Shaper Hub Philadelphia by World Economic Forum. He has been a global TEDx organizer and a highly sought-after public speaker for topics such as entrepreneurship and international development. He delivers keynote and guest lectures in some of the top business schools and conferences around the globe. Dhairya sits on the advisory board for the European Commission program, Latin American Social Innovation Network. In 2015, the American Immigration granted him an approval for a special category work visa reserved for an individual of extraordinary abilities. We're very excited to have Dhairya here with us today, so please help me welcome him to the stage.
Good morning. How's the morning so far? Got the coffee kicking in? Ready to make some impact? That's a lot of chairs for one person, right? So let me get started. I'm Dhairya Pujara, the founder and chief executive officer for Ycenter. That doesn't mean much. You might not even have heard of Ycenter until today. I'll give you the story of why I'm here, besides being all of the things that we just talked about. At Ycenter, we are a global design thinking enterprise, creating and delivering programs to work with young people to embrace problems. We want you to pick problems. We want you to love problems. Take those problems, look at them from an empathetic lens, and create solutions. Now, that all sounds great, a lot of keywords here, a lot of buzzwords. We all love this. But let's get to some of the real examples of how we've done that. I want to start the whole journey of how I discovered the whole power of SDGs framework right from Mozambique, Africa. We don't have anyone from Mozambique today this morning. I was going through the list. We wish. We have Malawi, I guess, closer there, right? As close as it gets. But we have no one from Mozambique. So I'll fill in the gap. The story starts from Mozambique, and I have some photos for you guys here on the screen. I remember quitting my corporate job on first day in US, 9 to 5, 5:30. I was like, I'm done. That's a true story and a different conversation. And I find myself on a plane to go to Mozambique, a country where no one speaks the language that I'm used to, English. And I'm from India. I speak 4.5 human languages and 2 computer. But they don't speak any of that. They speak Portuguese, and I don't. So I learned a little bit of Portuguese just because I wanted to understand the community. And that was my lesson number 1. You want to make any kind of impact, speak the language of your community. You can't take a foreign stand going into international development. Just doesn't work anymore. Just imagine, somewhere midnight, 2 a.m., someone knocks at your door, doesn't speak your language, and tells you, I'm going to fix all your problems. Exactly. We don't want that. So I show up in this community thinking I'm going to be the hero that the world asked for, and I'm going to change everything here. But I realize no one asked for me. I don't even know much. I don't even speak the language. Spent 5 months living in this community. And first 3 months spent in learning the language. So now the half I spoke about, 4.5 human, the half is Portuguese. I understand more than I can speak. But I remember one of the first problems, and I think Rick also talked about this morning, was malaria. And I saw it was very prevalent, all across the country and across sub-Saharan Africa. And I read about it, before going to Mozambique. Everyone would ask me, because a lot of people didn't know about the country much, so they would all Google, my friends who cared about me. They're like, wait, we just read about it. The malaria is a huge problem. How are you going to survive, all of that. I'm a vegetarian. They're like, what are you going to eat? And that was my mom's question mostly. If she's watching this, then she knows. And so I found people grappling with issues of malaria. But more importantly, I saw there were medical devices worth 80 to 100,000 US dollars in this hospital, and no one has any idea how to use them. Or they were broken, and they have no clue how to fix them. I got a rude shock. Like, where does this come from? If you don't know how to use them, you don't know how to fix them. Why do they exist in your hospital? Where did they come from? They were being donated from hospitals in the West and from countries around the world with great intentions. No doubt about the intentions. But my question is, if your intention doesn't match your action, are you really making any impact? Does it even matter? Does your donation matter anymore at this point? I got a chance to read a wonderful book, which I highly recommend you want to pick up. It's, of course, polarizing, just like all the bestsellers. Dead Aid by Dambisa Moyo. She's an economist. Dead Aid by Dambisa Moyo. She's an economist, an African-born woman who is now made a name for herself, talking about economics and poverty and international development. And I got a chance to read about this book before I went to Mozambique. And she takes a stand of, stop giving aid to Africa. It's killing more than it's helping people. And I was like, wow, that's a big stand. I mean, I've never thought of it that way. I thought donation charity works. That's a powerful statement to make right there. It kills more people than it actually helps. When I was in this community and I figured out that the mosquito nets that were being donated from the West, which cost $2, as Rick mentioned, were being used for fishing. Because if you are hungry and you're not sure where your food is coming from tonight, and you might get bitten by a mosquito and might get malaria, what are you going to fix first? The hunger. So let's use the nets. And here is another problem. The mosquito nets cost $2, yes, but when they're donated, they're free. And guess there's no business model that can beat free. So every local mosquito net manufacturer is now out of business. And anyone who doesn't qualify for a free mosquito net in this community cannot really access one because all the local sellers are gone, pushing them further into poverty. Talk about the connection of healthcare, economics, inequality, income inequality. And this was really bothering me. I'm an engineer, 6 years of engineering. I studied biomedical engineering. But what's more important is that engineers are taught to think linearly, right? If this, do this. If not this, do that. And then we made computers. And now even computers don't think linearly. We know about the artificial intelligence and all of that. Hey, guess what? But people are scared about this AI and all of that. I'm not. We have one superpower as humans, empathy. They're not getting that anytime soon, I feel. So my story is about that. And I'm like, I want to understand how they live. So I was living in the community, and I started fixing some of the medical devices. But more importantly, I was not fixing devices, because someday I'm going to be standing in Charlottesville and talking to all of you. Who's going to do it then? I had to fix people, the knowledge gap. So every time I was fixing devices, I had someone standing, taking notes, asking questions. And if we had access, we would make a video out of it. Because all the manuals would be available in English or in Spanish, which is closer to Portuguese, but not Portuguese. These are medical devices. You need exact manuals. You can't just guess how to fix this. It has to be right. So that was my first project, and I didn't know about SDGs back then. I'm in a rural, and this is 2012-13. We didn't have SDGs initiated yet. We are still talking about the implications of MDGs, how they succeeded or failed, and the whole debate was just starting to open up. So I started reading about MDGs, and I'm like, this does cater to a lot of the things we're talking about. Looking in hindsight, I know what I was working on, when I was working on good health and well-being. But one of the key things we still wanted, malaria was bothering me. I'm an engineer, as I told you, linear thinking. And I read more about it. I'm like, when was malaria eradicated from US? 1953. This is 2013. Is it preventable? Because if it is, then no one should die. Yes, it's preventable. Can you diagnose it? Yes, you can. Can you cure it if you do find out you have? Yes, you can. Wait, people still die of this? It's preventable, diagnosable, and curable. And you're telling me every 60 seconds someone gets affected by malaria and they die of it? That doesn't make sense, even to a linear thinker like me. So we started looking at, we use design thinking, and we started looking at what does the community have access to. There's something called as a rapid diagnostic testing kit, available for free. 1 drop of a blood, 15 minutes, and you know if you have malaria or not. Today in Charlottesville this evening, if you want to order food, open up one of the apps and you'll have food in next 30 minutes. But you don't have access to any of these devices. You don't have access to a rapid diagnostic testing kit. But I was really inspired from, having now lived in US, getting something delivered to your doorstep. So we ended up creating an SMS-based application called Ola Health, Ola as in hello in Portuguese, to actually deliver rapid diagnostic testing kit at your doorstep. So all you have to do is send a message, and a community health worker will show up with an RDT. But here's the thing, they don't have internet, so we are using only SMSs. And my friend Miguel, as he told me in Mozambique, we have access to, not just Mozambique, a few other African communities, and even in India, we have access to 3 things: an access to a cell phone, an access to a can of Coca-Cola, and access to religion, in that order. Like, yeah, makes sense. I did see all of those everywhere. So let's start using phones and develop some solutions. And that was one of our first solutions in 2014. We ended up becoming part of Microsoft's BizSpark program, which helped fund the program for the next 3 years, all the technology infrastructure needs, and actually go on the ground and have people start using this SMS system. Moving on, when you're in a small village like, I was in a small village called Shikuki in the province of Inambani, in a city of Mashish. And it was quite small. Everyone knew there's this Indian guy from US who's here fixing devices. The news spreads like wildfire. Like, we need to go and see this guy. And I'm a biomedical engineer, which made no sense to people because, like, you are a doctor. I'm like, no, I'm not a doctor. Then why do you have medical in your degree? And they started bringing patients to me. I'm like, please, no, I'm a doctor for devices, and that was my, my comeback. So what they did next morning, there was a queue outside my office with anything they can find broken in their home to have me fix it. This is a picture of me trying to fix a fan. And I'm like, my friend is looking with disgust, like, do you know how to fix fans? I'm like, does it matter? This fan is not working for the last 2 years. That's what they told me. So let me give it a shot. So guess what? After 2 hours of trying to, troubleshoot, I fixed the fan. I didn't. I wish I could have said that. No, I didn't. I couldn't fix the fan. I don't know how to fix the fan. But I learned something really important. When things are bad, when things are terrible, like this is the bottom of that fan. This is as bad as the fan can get. There's nothing to lose. And that's true for most of the problems that we are trying to tackle around the world. You see something which is really, really bad, that's a great starting point, I believe, as an entrepreneur. You can't go much worse than that. I think we as a world, I think climate action is one of those things. We have done enough harm to this planet. Can we do much worse than that? Yes, questionable. If we don't do anything, it will keep happening worse and worse. But I think it's a great point. Let's get to work. Someone asked me this question, one of the students I was working with, how can I make an impact tomorrow morning? I'm like, you just have to wake up, go by your regular day, take a cab, go to work or get a coffee. You will be making impact. Unfortunately, a lot of it will be negative because you won't realize. Every single living person on this planet makes an impact. The question is it going to be intentional and is it going to be positive? And that's what I want to focus on. So, this was my first experience. And I remember we started becoming a community, as you can see. People are bringing, I saw a Walkman. Someone brought a Walkman for me to fix. I'm like, I haven't seen this in years. So there was Walkman, there was fan, a bunch of things. Next, I started showing them TED Talks, just to inspire the community. I'm like, let's come up with solutions. So I showed a bunch of TED Talks. Someone in the community stood up and said, this is all by people we don't even know. They look like Americans and Europeans who are solving African problems. Is there anyone from Mozambique who's given a TED Talk or who's doing something cool? Like, I actually Googled, there's no one. There's not a single Mozambican innovator who has ever given a TED Talk. And I told them, do you have enough innovators for them to, get a platform like this? Like, we have tons of them. Right here in this village, there's a guy who has like 50 patents on his name. He's invented this and he's invented that, but no one knows of him. I'm like, okay, we'll do our own TED series. So we ended up doing our own TEDx conference. We had 0 budget. We reached out to TED office in New York. They sent us a box. They came shipped all the way, UPS, 30, almost 28 days from New York to South Africa to Maputo, the capital of Mozambique, and then eventually to the village where I lived, Mashish, and they didn't give it to me. They were asking for money, bribe. And that was a point where I would think, I want to do something good. Is it okay to do a little bad to do something good? Answer is no. My professor taught me this. Ethics is binary. You have it or you don't. There's no in between. Little bad to do great good doesn't work. No is no. So we decided we are not going to bribe this official just to get our TEDx box. We don't want to do a TEDx which is based on corruption. So we ended up having no box. The box actually considered microphone, an inverter for powering. We didn't have electricity in the village, very inconsistent. We had a DVD player. We had a small screen. We can throw in TED Talks with Portuguese subtitles, the whole kit. And we had those materials with which you make those TED letters you see on the stage. We didn't get any of that. So I told the community, we need to, we can't do this anymore. So guess what? We used local resources, coconut, banana leaves, and it ended up doing. And that's how we made the TEDx letters. And this is our official merchandise. We found some pencils lying around. We shaved the top, and we wrote TEDx Shikuki. And that was our merchandise for everyone who came to the event. And what I realized is that the communities are not going to be stopping at any, they don't know what failure is. They ask me, why are we doing this in the first place? I'm like, you told me there's no TED speaker from your area. So I thought, let's do our own TEDx. And we got a bunch of innovators in the room. They shared their stories. And then I reached out to TED after this event the same afternoon, and I emailed them in New York. I'm like, hey, I never got the box. They stole it. But we still ended up doing it. Here are some pictures. I got a response saying, you know, this is one of the most innovative TEDx events ever. We want to interview you guys and put it on our official TEDx blog. And that's what happened. And then they wrote a blog about the first ever TEDx in the country of Mozambique and blah, blah, blah. You can check it out on Google. Moving on. With all this energy, I came back and I launched Ycenter. I'm like, we need to do more with this. I need to work with more young people to create amazing solutions. So I'm from India, so I had to take my program next to India. And I remember working with a university, one of the top universities there, and we were doing a hackathon to work with students over 2 days. You know hackathons, where you heavily caffeinate students and expect them to come up with solutions? They don't sleep overnight, those kind of things. So we did a hackathon, and the dean of the university tells me, hey, this is a great idea, but the girls have to go back. Yeah, they use girls, not women. So the girls, all the college girls, they have to go back at 10 o'clock to their dorm rooms. They can't stay back. But it's supposed to be an overnight concert. I'm like, then you are not giving them enough chance to win this. They're like, we don't know, but it's not safe for girls to be here after 10. I'm like, but this is happening on your campus. This is your college campus. Your faculty is going to be there. You have a security. These are students that they're used to. This is their community. You're telling me the girls are not safe in your own college campus? And they said, yeah, we just can't. So we decided not to do the event at all. And we took it outside the campus, and we did a women-only hackathon. We don't want the men in the room. So we ended up doing a women-only entrepreneurship program, and that's how the project WISE was launched, Women in Science and Entrepreneurship. And we interestingly got some amazing response. And we didn't do it in big cities in India. Big cities are very divided in India. If you look at Mumbai or other Chennai or Kolkata, there's a lot of international foundations. There's all the corporate money, all of that. You go 100 miles away from that, nothing. No one cares. That's where we went. Like, let's go and do it in tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities where there's not much action happening. And we started doing our programs over there. The next was Indo-French government were coming together to launch a bilateral trade commission where they want more Indians to sell stuff in France and vice versa. And they figured out Dior, one of the fashion French house, they wanted to bring in more handicrafts from India because there was a huge demand in Europe for that. So all this are made by women in Rajasthan, a very particular state in India, very rich in culture and heritage. But guess what? They make all this, then they give it to a middleman, literally, and it's being sold for thousands of dollars, and these women hardly see any penny from that. We actually ended up doing a business program for the women because they have all the skills. But right here is a problem. They're not supposedly selling any of this themselves. So there's a huge disparity between what they can make and what they should be making. So we ended up doing, as part of this program, going to Jaipur, doing a program which was part of the Dior's fashion initiative. Next, we started looking at Mumbai, which is where I was born. And I'm like, my mom is a public school teacher, 32 years. So I know the system of public schools in India and around the world, how we're facing tremendous challenges with that. And public schools does not have the same connotation in India as they have in US. It's very different. It's not even for poor people. It's below poverty line. That's what we call it, BPL, people who are even below poverty line. Even the marginally poor people have access to a little bit better education system. But if you're below poverty line, you choose one of the schools. These schools are dungeons for drugs. They're dungeons for all kinds of bad things. You're sending your child to school thinking it's going to work for you. And it's exactly the opposite. And when you learn about it, the parents are afraid of sending their kids to school. And then, so we started doing anthropological research, just trying to map the community. If you see the picture on the right bottom, that is actually 2 mothers taking their children to the school with their backpacks. Now, that's privilege. Your mother actually coming and dropping you. Most parents are working class. They cannot even afford, they don't even know where the kid is going, what path they're taking, what kind of people they meet on this path. That's a living situation, 2 buildings very close to each other. So we ended up doing a design thinking workshop in local language, in Hindi, with the kids. We're like, if you were given a chance to change the situation, what would you do? And we had almost 80% of girls participating in this who presented their ideas. And one of the big things that came out was every community has access to a community square where they meet up every weekend for religious purposes of some festivals. They're like, how about we use this to create a safe space? And we don't learn much in schools. We want to go there, but we want to learn about life, which their parents do not have time. So we ended up creating Skills for Life program, which, by the way, was one of the initiatives that children actually, I mean, not children really, kids of middle school, elementary school recommended us to do. And we ended up creating this program in Mumbai, India. Moving forward, a lot of these programs, we realized that it's all great to go in a community and create these workshops and create some solutions. What happens after we leave? Will they sustain? I mean, it's a different thing to do a workshop for 2 days and feel that, okay, we are making an impact. What happens a month from that? So it was very important for us to build communities, to actually invest in the creating of ecosystems, which includes, of course, our participants, but it has to be supported by funders. If one of these students end up creating an app or a website to connect farmers directly to the consumers so they can cut down the middleman, we need to make sure this student actually gets access to that kind of funding. This morning, I guess someone asked about funding situation, and your answer was perfect. It's important. Students come up with craziest of ideas. They want to build this, they want to solve poverty, they believe failure is not possible, which is great energy. But how do you back it up with finance? How do you back it up with mentorship? How do you back it up with more educational resources? This is an example from Kenya where we did a project called You Lead, which stands for Youth-Led Agriculture Extension and Development. We saw a bunch of problems being solved together working with young people, right from the fact that there was a huge gender disparity when it comes to farming. Women would do a lot of laborious work, again the same thing, men would take away the income. This morning there was a question about women entrepreneurship. I guess, I don't know your name, but from over there, she raised that issue. I think it was a wonderful question. I've seen that firsthand, where there's a whole series of women empowerment programs, but now there's a cultural aspect kicking in, where she has to cater to the husband, and all the incomes, she still doesn't have the independence that we were hoping that she would get. What are the ways around that? I'm happy to chat about that with you, post this workshop, because we did manage to not solve the problem, but did figure out ways where we could get there, and would love to touch upon that question. But when we were in Kenya, we found that there were similarities, the disparity of gender in farming. We also looked at problems around young people don't want to be in agriculture because it's not sexy enough. Fair enough, a great point. They're like, I don't want to go and start farming. They have learned about entrepreneurship and the world. The idea of development is America. So ask an average young person in Kenya, their dream was to go away from Kenya, not actually work there. Ask me when I was in India, what was the Indian dream? It was come to US and get a great job. That's 90% of developing countries' young people. That's what we get fed on. I see a lot of nods here. My parents would wish that for me as well. Like, we hope you get a better life than this, than what we got for you. That's natural for them to, care about their children. But that was killing the economy in some way. You can get into this community, create all these resources, teach them how to code. A very popular program, teach them how to code, create business, but there's not enough opportunity. So guess what? Let's go to US, let's go to Europe, very popular from Kenya for people to go to Europe as well, and let's figure out a better life from this. So we had to solve that problem, the brain drain. We realized that on the same hand, there is another problem with smallholding farmers. The average age of farmers in Kenya was roughly 58 to 60. That's really old. They're not coming up with it. They're not using technologies. They're still using farming practices that affect the climate, the environment. But they do make enough food to actually serve, if you really look at the production of Africa in terms of statistics and numbers, it can serve its own continent the way it wants to, but it just doesn't work that way. We still have the highest rates of malnutrition and access to food in the continent. Why is that disparity? This is one of those malaria things. It's preventable, curable, diagnosable, but people still die of that disease. So sometimes dots just don't connect. We have to connect those things. So we started working with young people who can now build solutions for the farmers in their country, and we taught them that agriculture is not about going to the farms and actually wearing those gumboots and actually, just using the axe and actually sowing seeds. There's a lot more to that. You can use technology. They love technology. Young people want to use technology to solve problems. We're teaching them how to make an app. In actually just 7 days, we had a student use a small Android smartphone where they would use image processing. You can actually just take a picture of your cow, and it would go to a database, and it would, go through series of problems that your cow could potentially have, and it would give you the issues that it has, and then recommend you the treatments. Now, why is this great? Because all the other animal husbandry-related extension vet services were actually sponsored by some corporate company. So if you go to them, they wouldn't necessarily push the drug for your cow, and eventually the milk production decreases, so now you have to give artificial fertilizers to improve, or hormones to improve the milk production. It's a vicious cycle. And that's their livelihood. They're not caring about environment. They're not caring about, am I feeding the hormones that gets eventually in this food chain of human beings, artificial hormones to increase milk production. They're thinking about, I want to make money out of this. This is my livelihood. And we started working with young people in Kenya in roughly 2016. It's been 3.5 years. We work with the local universities, and I would say it's one of the most amazing set of people I've ever worked with, the kind of solutions they build, the kind of access now we are able to bring to them in terms of investment opportunities, in terms of incubators, social incubators. And by the way, the whole social entrepreneurship thing doesn't make much sense to me. Yeah, it's a bold statement to make, but I'm going to make it anyway. It's entrepreneurship. Solve the problem, figure out someone to pay for it, and just do it really well. Social, yes, you are intentionally making a social impact. But I think that's entrepreneurship at large. That's what every business is supposed to do. They have to cater to a customer's need. Right now, the customer is people and the planet. Of course, there's profits. And Rick, I think, talked about Business Roundtable this August. It's not only stakeholders, it's not only shareholders, it's stakeholders. Completely different things. We are a stakeholder in every company. You buy a product from a company, you are a stakeholder. They have to listen to you. We have to also listen to our planet. That's a huge stakeholder. Because you don't have to be a rocket scientist to imagine that if this planet doesn't exist, none of these businesses won't. This is a very simple linear logic. And this is one of the key stakeholders. And I found students in Kenya and leaders in Kenya actually taking upon this responsibility head on and building those double bottom line, triple bottom line ventures. And by the way, you don't have to always start a company. You can actually participate in your local community chapter. You can work with a co-op organization. You can build a capstone project as a senior student in your university. That could give you a great head start. You can end up working for a Wall Street firm. Nothing wrong with that. We need capitalism in a good way. I'm going to be making a lot of statements that we can have a conversation later. We need it, but we need it right. We need it to be fixed, and we have to do that. And I would be happy that one of my students who's actually been through our design thinking training and who's learned empathy as a powerful tool to solve problems ends up working for one of the largest wealth management companies. Because I know when he gets there, they're going to actually think about what can we do to make our investment policies, our financial vehicles more inclusive, more sustainable. In fact, one of the companies, IDEO, that does design thinking in California, which uses design thinking at large for commercial enterprises, they were actually approached by one of the biggest wealth management companies in US. How can we cater to millennials to start saving money and start investing? Because as I think the second panel this morning, we're talking about the young people not being, we're given a lot of flack for a lot of things. I mean, to be fair, we should receive it. Mostly events like this, I would wear sneakers, but I'm not doing that today out of respect. So I do get why we get all of that flack. But having said that, also we have an amazing power to use technology almost as a default way to solve a lot of these problems. A lot of millennials are now actually questioning. They don't like to be sold anything. So if companies are really hard selling, they stay away. They're like, this is not us. They want sharing as opposed to selling. Can I do something that's actually going to be worthwhile for my friends, for my community? And that's fine enough. It starts from there. And I saw that, even in Mozambique, when we actually would go and tell someone, hey, you need to get a test for malaria. It's going to help you. And we realized we're taking such a Western approach to medicine and preventative care. People here, if I tell you, you have to take care of yourself, you'll go and see the doctor. But over there, they're like, no, I don't care. I only care about my family. Okay, then here is the pitch. Please go and get yourself tested, because if you get malaria, your family could get it. Your son could get it, your daughter could get it, your wife could get it, and that's going to impact your whole family. Now suddenly it's a matter of community. It's family, it's community. And now they are proactive. And that was a lot of learning for us, We do not want to get into these communities with the fact that I want to build solutions for you guys. I want to build solutions with you guys. We have to move that forward to with. It's a journey. But it's a very important journey we have to take as millennials or anyone here. Every company is now talking about customer experience, customer-centric solutions, which means they want to keep customer at the center of it, not profits. Profits will flow. It's a fringe benefit. Talk about selling clean water to someone for a cent every single day. A cent, even with poverty line, someone can afford 1 cent of water every single day if it's clean enough to protect their family. That's a great business model. Trust me, there's a billion people out there who don't have access to clean water. If anyone is planning to start a new business, start it tomorrow morning. And if you do eventually make it big, send me my check. No, but it is a huge business. We need clean water. There is no doubt about it. You know, it's a no-brainer. You don't have to do market research. Exactly. So we started moving forward, and we actually created Technology for Good programs. This is actually one of our flagship programs where we work with young students, college students, even faculty members. And I've been doing this every weekend. Last weekend, I was in California, Fresno, UC Davis, Cornell. I'll be in UVA in 2 weeks doing a similar exercise with students here. But the goal is, what happens when I give technology and empathy to a student to build solutions? Students have created applications that would blow up your mind. They have created all of that in 24 or 48 hours. Some of the students have never coded in their life. They don't know how to code. But there are applications today available on website, on internet, which you can just plug in, drag and drop applications. You can build a phone application without learning how to code. And students are doing that every single workshop. Every workshop, if I have 20 students, I see at least 5 new solutions tackling SDGs head on. Of course, the question is what happens after that? So we continue working with faculty. We see if any of the students are interested in taking this forward as a business venture. A lot of universities, by the way, have now funds for their business plan competition. We also have universities focusing on social businesses. We encourage students to apply that. Students take it for granted, all these applications sometimes, or the business plan competitions. It's amazing. While you are in college, no one expects anything from you. So go ahead and build that company. Worst is you might fail. And guess what? I told you about failure a couple of minutes ago. It's awesome. There's no pressure. Ask my parents. If I'm failing, they're like, okay, he's not good for anything. That's great. That's a great start. I can now rebuild again everything. So give it a shot. And these are some of the universities I've worked in US only. But what has been fascinating is that it's not America alone. In fact, last night we were discussing this, and Rachel, we talked about it. It was a great question that Nancy asked about SDGs' role in America. And I found, having worked in 10 countries across 4 continents through Ycenter, US actually ranks on the bottom in terms of giving importance to SDGs. Because somehow poverty, homelessness, gender inequality is a problem for Africa. It's a problem for Asia. It's a problem it's not our problem. Are you kidding me? Have you taken a walk in your community? Have you seen what San Francisco looks like? Have you seen what Philadelphia public schools look like? And you don't have to feel sad about it. There is no point in being sympathetic. Sympathy doesn't solve problems, but guess what does? Empathy. Go out there, understand what it means to go through these problems. Use one of your skills. You're a business student, build a business model that works. It's not that difficult, and the worst is you will fail, which is not that bad after all. We anyway have these problems to solve. So let's give it a shot. And thank you so much for listening. I'm going to take some questions from you guys. Yes, let's start there. Is there water I can get? Oh, okay, I'll take this. Yeah.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
I just have one between question and comment about the idea of the clean water. When we want to do a project about clean water, yeah, you don't think all the people have the right to free access for drink water? Because the point now, if we want to speak from company perspective, like Nestle, the Swiss company, control most of the source of the clean water in the world. At the same time, by that, they create more problem by plastic. If we want to speak about the other sustainability for the climate change, Nestle and Coca-Cola, they produce a lot of plastic, which destroy a lot of ocean.
Yep.
And yeah, I just want to, how we make the right balance between money and social impact. And yeah, that's
Great question. Thank you so much. What's your name?
Abdullah.
Abdullah. Thank you, Abdullah, for that question. I'll answer that one first before we take the next one. We had someone from Zambia here, right? Right there. And we have 2, yeah. I read a story about this from Zambia, about women carrying water on their head, walking for miles. And that's actually a story of many countries, including parts of India. Women carrying water on their head for miles and miles, bringing it back. Not the cleanest of the water, but that's the best source of water available. And only women would do it for some reason. Talk about men talking about doing, hard work, and they're not there to be seen anywhere. It's all the women every single day for the rest of their lives. So a bunch of engineers go in there, they fix the problem. They spend millions of dollars building a very sophisticated plumbing system and giving you one of the best inventions of mankind, which we take for granted, tap. Now they've installed taps and pumps, but no woman is using this. And they ask why, and they figured out that the only social life this woman had was going with their friends to fetch water. While there was a real problem about water, but you took away that social. They're not using Snapchat and Facebook to bitch about their husbands. This is their chance. They want to talk about their women's health. They want to talk about their kids. They want to talk about themselves. This is it. You took that away. So while everyone thought, oh, what an amazing solution. We build a plumbing system. Everything is going to be good. Doesn't work that way. I think I would like to quote this before I finally give you the right answer is Einstein. He talks about we cannot use the same mindset to create solution with which we created the problem in the first place. And that's very, very important. A lot of these problems, I'm not asking that make bottled water. In fact, bottled water companies don't make water, they make bottles. Think about it. Water companies don't make water. No one makes water. They make bottles. They make plastic. That's different. But when you really think of solving the water crisis, you are not talking about the same business model. It also requires an innovative business model. It's not about using something that has been working. It hasn't been. That's why we are in this situation. We really require different kind of solutions that the world hasn't seen, and that's why the business opportunity. There's an opportunity, and in the meanwhile, if you figure out how to use ocean water to drink, if you figure out a way to desalinate this water, tons of water, a lot of people are trying that. That technology has a lot of other potential as well. It's not just the water for the rest of the world. You are a billionaire I'm looking at right now, if you figure that out. So Abdullah, I do not think we can use existing solutions and just take them and put it in a different setup. It's not going to work. They have done enough harm. We cannot take them. We have to come up with different solutions. They have to be unique. Yeah. Questions over here? We had a question over there as well, I guess.
Thank you so much for this engaging conversation. So in your speech, you highlighted women-only entrepreneurship programs and the importance of finding a sustainable funding model. So I was wondering if you could highlight the implications of microfinance on these communities. I'm sure you have experience with the Grameen Bank. How can we transplant these institutions to like Mozambique or Kenya, which you also discussed?
Grameen Bank, of course, as we all know of, Mohammad Yunus, Nobel Prize, all of that, has been adopted in many countries. But time and again, what we have seen is, I would go back to the question she asked this morning, the cultural context. We somehow completely miss that aspect, We are talking about some deep-rooted traditions that somehow are not getting in the way of development. I know by no means I want to belittle any of these traditions, but they have to be considered. And sometimes it's actually what people do is it's transplantation. We need evolution in some form. We have to start from an empathetic perspective. We have to understand what does empowerment look like. If I ask this room, how many of you believe poverty is a problem? I'll get a few hands up. And then breaking news, it's not a problem. It's a symptom. If you really look at the causes of poverty, there are many others. You can't solve poverty. You can solve lack of access to resources, lack of access to healthcare, lack of unemployment, which leads you to poverty. It's like going to a doctor and saying, I have stomachache. You don't get medicine for stomachache. You get medicine for if you ate bad. If you had something bad last night, then you get something related to intestine. But if you pulled a muscle while doing exercise, they're two completely different stomachaches. So we have to get to the cause of the problems. I do that all the time with design thinking, cause-effect analysis. What are the causes? Why is someone poor in this community? Is it because of their gender? Because if that's the case, I have to identify it's not an economic problem, it's first a gender problem. Let's head on focus on that. In Mozambique, a part of the community where we were working, they had a huge problem of child marriage. And that was from tradition. You try to go in there and tell them, hey, this is wrong. You can't marry your young girls. And it's also bad for health. You can't do any of that. It's not going to work that way. In fact, the malaria thing, when we actually told people, you can take a drug to solve malaria problem in 3 days, that's what the treatment is. 3 pills for 3 days and you are out of malaria. And then you just have to be observed. You have to go and see the doctor. But there was a witch doctor in the same village, that would give you some natural herbs. They don't work. People have died because of it. But people listen to that person. So instead of fighting that and trying to claim this is wrong, we are right, we actually told him this is a way for you to become a rock star celebrity. Why don't you give our drugs? We worked with those people who were actually creating problems. That's positive deviance. You look for positive behavior. It's taught in socioeconomics. You can look it up. It's a whole class in itself, look up what's working in a different context, draw from that, and try to apply that. So I feel for microeconomics, it's similar, you know. Do these women even have access? Do they have a bank? Like, do they even understand money? Were they given financial literacy? And we have to start from that point, eventually, before we transplant a solution from other countries. Question? Yes.
Hi, thank you for the amazing presentation. It was insightful. So just, I believe like every great idea should have a business model. So what's the business model for the Ycenter?
Wonderful. Our business model is training. People want to learn about entrepreneurship. Students want to get real-world skills. So we go to universities, and universities do a great job of giving you foundational education and knowledge. We are coming in, giving our experiential programs as a service. So Ycenter gets funded through those programs in a more simple way. Of course, then there is details to that.
University is paying you? Or?
Yes, they pay us to do our programs. Simple.
I have actually follow-up question, and how has cross-cultural and cross-country collaboration worked for you?
Yeah, so that's the last question we'll take. Yeah, cross-country collaborations. We initially were actually very isolated with what we were doing. We were doing pockets of work in Mozambique, in US, in India. One of the ways we started doing it is as simple. This is the most simplest way. It's creating a WhatsApp group and actually putting everyone together. And now we are seeing actually this was in April, where a bunch of students from Cairo in Egypt, where we were doing a workshop, are collaborating with students in Queens who have never been to Egypt or mostly not even been outside US, are collaborating with the students in Cairo to create an education program. You know, so it's been an amazing journey to give that level of access. That's why I said initially, we are now focusing on not doing programs. Programs is a part of our business model. We will fail if we do not end up creating that community of global problem solvers. We want people to talk about failures. You know, there are many failures I discounted from here. A lot of projects I didn't work. I created a solar-powered cell phone charger that sits on a can of Coca-Cola. Bombed. It was a great design. I wrote about it in Huffington Post. You can go and Google this, my name and go solar in Africa. It bombed. It was a great design, but we couldn't close the gap of 50 cents. There was a Chinese charger that was $1.50. We were $2. We were doing local manufacturing, all great social entrepreneurship, all the boxes ticked off. Nobody wants to spend extra 50 cents because it's Mozambican. That's not what they care about. Oh, great, I don't care if it's Chinese or Mozambique. I'm getting a cheaper product. So we learned a lot of those things in community. If only I can transport that knowledge to Egypt, India, they will avoid those mistakes and make new ones. So I think one of the biggest ways to collaborate is create that technology platform, which we ended up doing in the last 2 years, actually. So thank you for that. Thank you, everyone. It was wonderful being here. Thank you.